Tech titans like Apple, Google, Airbnb, and X are exploring stablecoin payments. Now, this is courtesy of a report from Fortune magazine where they spoke to representatives from these companies and asked their take on stablecoins. Now, in the Fortune report, names like Airbnb and Apple did not directly respond to comment. So, as it stands right now, for Apple and Airbnb, it's mainly speculation and they're in the research phase, which is still good. When you think about how Apple or Airbnb can implement stablecoins, it will all fall down to cost effectiveness. Can they reduce the cost of sending money across borders? As a matter of fact, we're going to jump to a clip in a few moments. Uber CEO basically explaining that exact same thing at a Bloomberg conference. But these early conversations, guys, indicate that definitely the interest is there. And I can also imagine for a company like Airbnb, the setup with Airbnb, I understand that the relationship between the host and the people coming to stay at the location, it's very sacred. I could see stablecoins as being another transaction method, secure transaction method to expand Airbnb's their host, their market base to even more exotic locations, which is something that Airbnb has been leaning towards in recent years because of rising competition from names like Verbo, which are just selling rentals, right? In exotic locations. And then you have others that I believe offer themed sort of stays and vacays. So it's definitely a competitive landscape that Airbnb has to traverse through. So I think stablecoins for them specifically would be very interesting. Apple, on the other hand, whoa boy, a stablecoin integrated into Apple Pay, or for that matter, Google Pay, would be pretty interesting. Which one would they use? Considering all of the flack that they gave Uniswap a few years ago, I would be completely surprised, shocked to see Tether next to an Apple logo, right? Obviously, they may choose USDC, but we don't know. Let's jump to this clip, though, that we have courtesy of Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi. Excuse me if I butchered that. I tried several times before I turned the camera on. But we're going to jump to this clip here. And I want you to hear how Uber would implement a stablecoin.
I understand that you are considering stablecoin as a vehicle
Yes.
for Uber. Talk about where your considerations are and how that might benefit your business.
Yeah, we're still in the study phase, I'd say, but I think stablecoin is one of the, for me, more interesting instantiations of crypto that has a practical benefit other than crypto's store of value. You know, obviously, you can have your opinions on Bitcoin, but it's a proven commodity. And you know, people have different opinions on where it's going. But I do think that stablecoin is quite promising, especially for global companies that are moving money around globally to create a mechanism for us to essentially reduce costs.
To reduce costs. That is the biggest value driver, the most attractive component that enterprises, companies, brands like Uber are interested in when it comes to stablecoins. To the point of Uber, I could also see somewhere down the line, maybe a year, 2 years from now, DoorDash starting to ramp up the conversation around stablecoins because DoorDash's architecture, man, it's impressive. It is truly impressive. And I know one of the biggest issues right now, especially in the gig economy, and especially when we're talking about Uber, DoorDash, Grubhub, things like that, these drivers not getting paid. Watched a clip online the other day, man. DoorDash driver makes the delivery. Well, father orders some groceries for his daughter. Delivery gets made. Dasher gets his tip. Now, all of the tips are done electronically, and in the app, it tells you 100% of your tip goes to your dasher. Father does the tip. Pretty substantial tip. Figured it was okay. This driver wanted the tip in cash. So the driver came back to the house armed. All right. Long story short, the father, of course, protected his home, disarmed this driver, ended up with the gun, and then got him up off his property. I feel as though all of that could have been avoided if there was just a more improved payment mechanism, because that seems to be the real problem here. Even though when we tip on our end and it tells us 100% is going to the dasher, something tells me that there is another step in between the dasher getting that tip along with their other payments. Okay. Of course, more study would need to be had, but I know companies like Uber, DoorDash, they have been receiving a lot of flack over the last few years for that very reason. If you implement a stablecoin, you could then increase the amount of drivers that you have, because now you can bring in drivers from different locations who may not necessarily be able to access a US dollar bank account. That's when the game gets changed. And then additionally, for the existing drivers that, let's say Uber has to pay, well, they do. Uber has to pay drivers in countries all over the world here. You introduce USDC or Tether, okay? Because Tether's got the numbers right now. You introduce one of those stable coins, you immediately, almost overnight, improve the efficiency of your financial infrastructure. So I truly believe that one, Circle going public triggered something. Triggered a whole lot of people, ladies and gentlemen. And it's already setting records. And yes, I did grab some through Robinhood. All right. Only got one share. Full disclosure, only got one share. But that one share is now already worth 3 times what I paid for it. And I don't plan on selling. I do not plan on selling. I'm going to hold this sucker until Robinhood allows me to put it into my IRA accounts, because I truly believe Circle is going to have a lasting impact on this market. Looking back, this is the second major IPO we've had in the last 5 years. Now, I know I'm aware of blockchain mining companies that have gone public and other names like that. But as far as needle movers, as far as companies who I was able to watch build momentum in the space, it's only been Coinbase and Circle. And that's interesting because we have the major exchange that put everything on the map, and then the major stablecoin that is currently putting everything on the map. And as of this morning, the guys over at Gemini, Winklevoss brothers, they've announced that they're getting ready to put the paperwork in for their IPO. Are we about to enter the IPO phase for blockchain? That'd be very interesting, guys, because to be quite honest with you, crypto-related stocks, crypto-related ETFs, and I'll emphasize this point later, more later on, that's the easiest way to get involved with the market. Easiest ways. Now, we mentioned the Genius Stablecoin Act, the changes that were being made. One of them that stood out was the restrictions of non-financial public companies issuing stablecoins. So, we have a very interesting conversation being had here. Circle goes public. This triggers a response in the industry. Now we got big tech companies, large enterprises interested in stablecoins. However, coming from the government side, they're trying to establish some sort of guardrails to prevent these tech companies from issuing their own stablecoins and potentially creating a monopoly in the market like Facebook was going to do with Diem, now known as Libra, a few years ago. This will essentially force companies like a Google, Uber, Apple, X to the already established public networks that run these stablecoins, or the only publicly listed financial stablecoin issuer in Circle. And that raises another question. What will Tether do in response to this? Because someone asked Paulo Ardonio, Tether CEO, the other day, what would you guys do in an IPO situation? Measurements come out, their evaluation would have been north of $500 billion. He said that ain't enough. What? Brother. Okay, look, Tether CEO, this man is a renegade, and I'm starting to love it. All right. Now, to the point though, going back to the big tech companies being restricted, okay? Non-financial publicly listed companies from issuing stablecoins. We already know Google publicly listed. Google also has a universal ledger that they deployed earlier this year. We covered the story alongside the CME group. They look to introduce tokenization technology to enhance capital market efficiency. My question is, again, if that restriction goes through, how are they going to pivot? In Google's case, it's very interesting because they have been indexing blockchain data since 2018. With the data that they have, they could definitely pick the right chain. They could definitely pick the right chain is what I'm getting at here. So I like this story. I really do. I like this conversation because now the tech giants are moving into the space. Circle going public triggered something. We have CEOs from companies like Uber now coming out and publicly expressing some sort of interest towards stablecoins. Bottom line is this. Even though these conversations are early, I believe this is the beginning of a wave of stablecoin adoption between now and 2030. And if the Genius Act gets voted on later this month and it gets passed with those new changes in it, then that is going to drive all of the interest from tech giants into a very small pocket of networks here, either USDT or USDC. It really don't matter. The pocket of public networks that support either one of these stable coins, including Paxos, let's not forget about them, but the networks that support these public stable coins is a very, very small pocket. Very small pocket. And I truly believe that as things begin to go our way, that will have a tremendous impact on the next cycle, on the next leg up in this cycle.